Y'all were heavily involved with JSU too. Maybe they had
Very
something
involved
on campus. What was the deal with that?
Yeah, so looking at that time period, we're approaching Y2K, right? Well, the Y2K era was actually was a boon for our industry, and a lot of people think that that's a hoax. I'm here to tell you it absolutely was not. I wrote lots of code that had 2-digit dates in it.
What would have happened if you guys hadn't have jumped in front of it?
Yeah, and I appreciate you saying that, because I truly do believe it's because of our industry and our fortitude and our efficiency and just commitment. And we all work lots of late nights and all-nighters to get all that stuff done. I'm talking about for a couple of years. I don't mean just the, Y2K rolling the clock on between 1999 and 2000. You would have gotten inaccurate calculations in everything that deals with a date calculation is what would have happened. So when you added the 1 to the 99, for example, in a date calculation, you'd have got 0, 0, but it would have been 1900 versus 2000 because it implied in the code 19. So it didn't know the difference.
It would have retailed on people's home computers, but I imagine what it would have done to all these big systems in the hospitals, the schools.
They would all fail.
They would have been
Every single one
massive
of them
failure for records, accounting.
All that was not fear-mongering. It was true. We actually did a project for the New Jersey.
Planes have fallen out of the sky?
The air traffic control systems would not have been functional. They just wouldn't have flown.
Think about it from the ground perspective.
Yeah, they wouldn't have flown. It wasn't the planes. It's ATC. And all the systems used to do flight planning and file flight plans couldn't do it.
Interesting.
Wouldn't work. So because they all only required 2-digit year, and the system put the 19 in front of it to do all the data arithmetic, and that wouldn't have worked. So they would have just shut everything down. All that's absolutely true, but the industry was way out in front of that. And I can tell you, all of our customers were spending money like wildfire to upgrade, to mitigate the problem. One big project that we completed was for the New Jersey Department of Corrections. And you say, how the heck did you end up in the New Jersey Department of Corrections for Mississippi? We got drug in by one of the subcontractors that we had a relationship with.
I'm glad you brought this up. I've heard this story, and I wanted to bring it up.
Okay.
And I couldn't remember what state it was in.
New Jersey.
Yeah,
New Jersey. So there's a company called FileNet. Now, today, we don't need all this sophisticated, expensive, what we call document imaging software. Back then, you did. You didn't have the capability to just create documents like you do now, and they come out on a printer and look just like the way you created them, and you had all the tools to do that, and you had plenty of storage to store all those documents. Well, back in those days, you had to have special software and special storage devices. Actually, it was network CD-ROM. That's how we used to store that stuff. Disk space is cheap today. We don't even worry about it. Back then, you couldn't do that. So it's FileNet.
Right?
Yeah, exactly. And you got the cloud storage, which is virtually free. But back then, none of that existed, and this company, FileNet, was a big part of this Y2K remediation project for the New Jersey Department of Corrections, and the state had attempted 3 different requests for proposals, RFPs, to procure a solution to remediate the Department of Corrections Y2K problem, which was legitimate, and each one of those iterations failed. And these guys who had a relationship with us called us, they were out of California, and said, would you guys consider priming this contract, serving as a prime contractor? And honestly, I wouldn't have agreed to it, but my father was terminally ill, and I was dealing with him, and one of my employees agreed to it without my knowledge. And the day we found out we won that project, she told me that it was the day my father passed away. I remember it vividly, in 1998, May of 1998. And I said, we won what? And she started telling me about it. I said, what in the heck are we getting into? This is a $40 million project that we were going to serve as the prime contractor, and there were 5 subcontractors.
Was this maybe your biggest contract to date, or one of the biggest?
At that point it was, yeah. But it was also by far the most risk, because we had less than 2 years, essentially, to get this thing done. And I've got an employee that's on site managing the project, and I'm involved in it as well. And he called me up one day and said, man, we got problems with this thing. There's some of the numbers aren't working out with respect to what we've quoted and relative to what the subcontractors are telling him it's going to cost. And I'm thinking, how we get all messed up? And it was this employee I had that ultimately we learned had some issues and sued us. Only time I've ever been sued by, knock on wood, by an employee in 30-something years. But the bottom line is I ended up having to travel to New Jersey to take the thing over, to steward it through, and that was every week for a little over 2 years, from here to beautiful downtown Trenton, New Jersey. They brought in a group called the Gartner Group. You may not be familiar with them. They're one of the most prestigious IT consulting organizations on the planet. The Fortune companies use them all the time. Across the river there in New York, state of New Jersey brings them in and says, hey, guys, how long is it going to take to do this project? And they came back with a report that was a $150,000 document, essentially said, you need 66 months to do this. And this was September 98, and the department threw the report at me and said, what are you going to do about this, Gerard? I said, well, what do you want me to do? I mean, we're going to work our butts off, try to get this thing done. And then I realized we were upside down on this thing to the tune of about $2 million. And at that point, I told the procurement analyst for the state, hey, look, I'm bankrupt. I got to go home, start my life over. And he said, don't do that, Gerard. Go talk to the state treasurer first. I said, okay. I went and talked to the state treasurer.
In New Jersey. In
New Jersey. Madam Treasurer, was talking to her. And I told her, I'm upside down. I'm bankrupt. I got to start my life over. I apologize. It's totally my fault. It's my employee, but I take responsibility for it. I'm the CEO here. It's my fault. And Clay, she looked at me. She said, I remember it like it was yesterday. Please, Mr. Gibert, do not leave. And I started thinking about it, and it hit me. Yeah, if I leave, they're stuck because you can't find anybody to do this. In 1998, everybody's spoken for on the globe. There's nobody out there to take this thing on. She knew that, and she said, I'm going to take care of this for you. Do you trust me? And I said, yes, ma'am, I do. And she said, please go back to work, and I'll take care of it. And so about 6 months later, she called me up. She said, I got this handled for you. And they issued change orders and made me whole on it. But for that 6-month period of time, I'm thinking, am I wasting my time with this deal? I need to be starting my life over. We got the thing installed literally in early December 1999. We replaced, there's 16 correctional institutions in the state of New Jersey. I've been in every single one of them with the credentials to do so. And we replaced 16 independent IBM mid-range non-Y2K compliant systems with this very sophisticated Sun at the time, Sun servers, Oracle software, lots of integrations to the state payroll system, had a timekeeping system, scheduling system for an incredibly egregious unionized custody officers. Clay, I've sat in meetings before with the lieutenants on one side and the officers union on the other side. 9,000 of them, by the way.
Oh, wow.
I don't know how many we have in Mississippi.
It ain't that many.
Yeah, 400 or 500?
Yeah, 9,000. Maybe 900.
Right,
top,
exactly.
Yeah.
And highly unionized, highly compensated. And I literally would break up fights between them when they start arguing about it.
Like, I'm the IT guy.
Yeah. And I said, look, I just need to know how to calculate the overtime.
Yeah.
And the overtime algorithm was so complicated, I had to bring in a mathematician in, literally, to help me and turn that into code. But we got the thing done. Proud to say, got written up. And one of the trade rags for that industry is the most sophisticated correctional information management system in North America when we got done with it.
Let me ask you this. Clearly failure wasn't an option. And,
That's right.
And that's one of the things that I admire about you. Like I said, I'd heard that story before, and I was like, I think this is things people need to know about Gerard Gibert is failure's not an option. When you guys were sitting back, and I bet you, I remember exactly where I was at 11:59 on New Year's Eve 2000. What were you guys doing? How did y'all celebrate, and how quick would it have gone sideways if it didn't work?
Yeah, that's a great question. You may find this interesting. You talked about being an Ole Miss fan. I was at the bowl game in Shreveport. We were playing Oklahoma.
That's right. State played Texas the next day. Ricky Williams' last game. We got drum rolled.
And was that the Snow Bowl, snow game?
No, that was A&M.
Okay, A&M.
Texas was the Cotton Bowl.
Okay, and yeah, Ricky Williams just was a man among boys.
I was a huge Ricky Williams fan. I never anticipated us playing each other. You know, so I was like, well, I'm still a state guy, but I love Ricky Williams, at least via college.
Well, I'm a private pilot, and I was very active flying back then. I had a Piper Lance, a Piper Saratoga, by the way, the exact same airplane that JFK went down in, which wasn't the airplane's fault. It was JFK's fault. He broke every rule that you learn as a pilot. But
I was on the coast when that happened. I remember waking up in the Beau Rivage.
Yeah, went down.
Yeah,
yeah.
It was my mom down there on a trip.
So my wife and I flew to the bowl game over in Shreveport. I mean, I had confidence that everything was going to be fine and everything worked perfect. But I had so much confidence in everything we do, I literally just said, it's going to be fine. And I was on standby. My team was on standby in case any of our customers. But I got to tell you, it ended up being non-eventful. But we worked our rears off to make sure, test. In the state of New Jersey for the Department of Corrections, the contingency plan was to mobilize the National Guard to take over the correctional institutions because offenders, as we call them in New Jersey, we don't call them prisoners or inmates. Even back in 1998, that was politically incorrect. They called them offenders. They're mobile. A lot of people don't realize that. They move between institutions. They got to go to court. They got to go to the doctor and hospitals, all kinds of crazy things. Well, if those systems don't work, you got to lock them down. And that causes problems when they can't move. I mean, it causes unrest among the offenders. This is kind of a funny story that happened. I will write a book on this one day, but I never forget the superintendent of Trenton State Prison. Folks should look it up. It's located in downtown Trenton. It'd be like 4 or 5 blocks of downtown Jackson being walls enclosing a prison 60 feet up in the air, right? I mean, this was, and by the way, it was 2,400 incarcerated in Trenton State Prison, all in for life without parole because there's no capital punishment in New Jersey.
I knew that. I didn't know
so we had there was a canteen module, literally, at all these correctional institutions for the offenders to be able to buy stuff. They work, they have trust accounts, they get paid with trust.
And that's commissary for people that don't know.
That's exactly right. They call it a canteen. There was a canteen module as part of the software. Well, it's acting up at Trenton State Prison. There's some issues that they've got with their particular configuration of it. And the IT guy says, Gerard, we got to go down to Trenton State Prison. There's a problem with the canteen system. I walk in, and it's the superintendent, what would be called a warden in, I guess, common terminology. Really good guy. I mean, you just tell, you got to be, to run a prison with 2,400 people in it for life, you got to be a pretty stable person.
Those are 2,400 people that have nothing to lose.
Exactly right.
But their life.
And he said, Mr. Gibert, you know what time of year it is, don't you? I said, yes, sir. It's Christmas. He said, yeah. And you see these 2,400 that are all in here for life? If they can't buy Christmas cards to send home to their mothers, they're all in for life. They're all murderers and kidnapping, all the worst offenders in the state. He said they will riot and they will burn the place down and they will kill everybody. Do you understand, Mr. Gibert? Yes, sir. I got it. But that was one thing. And then about 6 months after we got done, I got a call from the IT director, said, look, we released somebody, and the day we released them, they went out and committed murder, and we think your system calculated the release date incorrectly. You may be liable for that. And about 3 months later, we learned that, no, our system actually did it perfectly, that they entered some data wrong. But
appreciate the anxiety.
Yeah. So that, you sign up for that. I'm not squeamish about that. That's the risk you take. But I'll say this, though, Clay. I'm no secret, I've been financially rewarded because of what we built there.